Hey everybody, it's Mac and welcome to the channel where every day is range day. And today we are going to be giving you our full review of the Primary Arms 2.5 times compact scope with the ACSS CQB reticle. I've had this scope for about a year now. It's been a while since I've had it. I've been running it on my 16-inch AR platform, and I've been waiting to do the review because I wanted to take this out to range. The Primary Arms ACSS reticle excels out at range with its ballistic drop compensation, also known as BDC. I was able to take it out at range at some longer distance, from 300 to 500 yards, and now I can finally give you my full thoughts on this scope. So without further ado, let's hop on into it. First off, let's look at the product packaging. It is a pretty nice box. It's funny they put some kind of like James Bond looking thing there. I don't know if that was intentional, but that is a gun barrel. That's kind of funny. You know, very simple. It tells all the facts right on top with what caliber the BDC is set for. For this one, this is 223, 556, 308, and 545, 539. So those are all some really standard calibers. The box does a really good job at describing the features that come standard on this optic. But the best thing about this box is that it displays how to use the CQB ACSS reticle with BDC. That is important, and anytime I was trying to figure out how to use this, I just quickly looked at that, read the guide, and got a pretty good idea of, you know, what dots mean what the markings mean in the reticle, because we'll get into that a little later. It is pretty complicated, but once you figure it out, it's not too bad. Then, opening up the box, what we have are a nice set of instructions which you will want to read on these. The reason why is because it has a lot of the descriptions of what the BDC means, so make sure you read these instructions because they will be very helpful in figuring out how to use your reticle. Tossing those to the side, we also have some foam, kind of nice, whatever, keeps your optics safe. A little lens wipe. You can tell I've used this a lot because it's still in the packaging and everything. Anytime I'm on the range, I just use my shirt or something to clean it off real quick. It also comes with these lens caps, which I had on the sight at first for a long time, but they didn't grow on me. I was not a fan of these, how they were. You know, some people really like these. They're spring loaded, so if you have an optic where you have your lens cover separate, you know, with a little bungee cord that holds them in together, sometimes you lose those. I know I've lost a couple. So if you're somebody who loses things, this is probably good because the lens cover goes right on the sight and doesn't go anywhere. But I wasn't a fan of it. They were kind of annoying, to me at least. And one thing is they started getting in the way of filming when we were running some GoPro footage. So I just went ahead and took these off. You can still use them without the flip, so it comes down to personal preference. I see some people who actually flip these upside down in the front, so when you flip it down, it's down low, resting on the rail, so you don't have to worry about it flipping up, getting in your way. One thing was it would kind of get in the way of changing the reticle brightness, so I took them off. Other than that, there's just some plastic and everything. A couple of Allen wrenches, which are used to mount the optic or for the optional piggyback rail on top. I had hundreds of those from other products, so I didn't have to open these up. But let's get into what you all are here for, and that is the optic. So some of the general features about this scope is that it's waterproofed, fog resistance, and nitrogen purged. With running it at several different range days and getting a lot of time with it, especially when ammo was cheaper, I did not have any issues with the sight picture clarity or with any kind of discoloration from the lens. The lens is pretty crystal clear, especially for an optic in this budget range. The lenses on this is fully multi-coated, which means that they put a couple different kinds of treatments and coats over top of the lens. They keep it from scratching or they keep it from glare. There are a few applications of why you use that, and so it's just pretty standard that they put that on the box. So I actually have the scope right here. I went ahead and took it off my AR so I could get some footage of the reticle and what it looks like illuminated, and having an opportunity for you all to look through this sight without pointing a gun in, you know, an unsafe direction. So that's why it's off of this, otherwise I would keep it on. To get a few things out of the way, it is a half MOA click adjustment, which the windage and elevation are covered by the screw-on caps. So that's nice. You're not going to have to worry about bumping it and accidentally messing up your point of impact. So that's nice. I am a fan of the screw-on feature there. I don't know if primary arms actually meant for this to happen or not. It's a wide enough click adjustment there. But what I did, instead of getting a knife or a flathead screwdriver out or something like that, when I was sighting this in on the range, I actually just used the edge of this cap right here. And you know, it doesn't fit perfectly, but it was good on the go. So it's pretty handy. On top of the sight, we have an optional mount for a Picatinny piggyback rail. Primary Arms has done a few different versions of this since this optic's creation, and now in Primary Arms 3 times or 5 times, the top of it comes automatically with a little Picatinny section. That way you can piggyback a pistol optic on top, which I'm a fan of that. I haven't had an opportunity of putting a pistol optic on top of a Prism scope, but a lot of people in the community are doing that now. But it's still, you have the opportunity. Sometimes if you don't want to use it and you want to do like some offset irons or offset red dot or something like that, you may be getting into a little bit more weight with that option, but still, it's a good option. The optic is made out of 6061 aluminum, and it is constructed pretty well. It's tough, it's durable. You can tell I've kind of beat it up a little bit. I've not gone easy on it for the purposes of this review. I put it through basically daily wear and tear on the range. You know, it hits a rock a couple times, it gets scratched on a rock when I set it down on the ground. Haven't done any torture testing with it, with throwing it at a rock or anything like that, dumping it underwater. We don't have the capacity to do that right now. Everything we buy with our own money. So we don't just destroy everything, because then if we do, we just have a bunch of naked rail ARs on top. But yeah, there's some dirt on it, some mud. It's been in the mud a little bit on the range, just really putting it through normal wear and tear. I said it is sturdy built, and that is true for the most part. There was one snafu, and it was really the only issue I've had with this optic the entire time I've had it. About 3 months into having this optic, I noticed zero was shifting a little bit, and that really started to concern me. I would zero it, run around a little bit with it, aim, shoot again, lose zero. I thought to myself that I may have wasted some money with this. However, after further review, it looked like the mount itself that this rail sits to was loose. So the little Picatinny mount here that the optic actually sits on, it had come loose over time. So I just took some Loctite and I went in, I just took some Loctite and tightened up that mount there, if you can see here, and now it is fine. It has not moved. Re-zeroed, and since I zeroed it 9 months ago, it's held zero. So for everyday overall durability, it is a durable optic. The lenses have not scratched. The body has a little bit, but oh well, it's gonna get scratched, and it's held up pretty daggone well. The optic is 4.7 inches long, so it does take up a good amount of rail space, but it's still pretty compact compared to like a low power variable optic where, you know, it's going to be at least twice the size of this. So that's why they're advertising it as compact. It also, you know, sits pretty low to the rail, so that's a good thing. For weight, it is 14.75 ounces, which it does have a little bit of weight to it. It helps that it is a compact optic. So compared to low power variables in this budget range, it's really not too bad. I don't really pay attention to the weight. Since this is a budget optic, it is going to be a little bit heavier, but that's par for the course with this affordable optic. It has really good eye relief on this optic. I think the specs are like 2.7 inches from your eye to the lens, so that's pretty good. But one thing I also notice about this is it's very forgiving. I've noticed with messing around with it and getting some time on the range, you can have an entire field of view on this reticle from about right here all the way to here. So that is a good amount of variation with how close your eye can be to this optic, which is a good thing because some people like different lengths of pull in their rifle. So if you prefer the optic being further away from you or being closer to your eye, that helps with having that range of eye relief. The other thing is, this is really helpful because since this is a CQB reticle, having that eye relief forgiveness is huge with a CQB reticle. There are technically 12 brightness settings with this. 0 with the red and the reticle completely off. You just have a black reticle at that point, which is fine. I'm actually a fan of. And it goes all the way up to 11 on the brightness, which on sunny days, your typical day on the range, that's where I was running this optic. You really needed to have the brightness all the way up for it to be clear and crisp on the range. I have not changed the battery in this optic at all since I've had this, so battery life is pretty good. I do not know the specifics of how long this will last. It's your typical C-type battery, so it's easy to find replacements for that. Like I mentioned before, this is a Prism scope. So if battery life is an issue and you're ever in a situation where your battery fails or the illumination in the reticle fails, the plus with having a Prism sight is that you still have that black reticle no matter what. So as opposed to a red dot where the battery goes out, you lose all functionality of that scope. With this, if the battery goes out, you still have a reticle that is functional and you can use, especially on sunny days. However, it's still good to have that illumination in the reticle, especially out at range. The red stands out against the background and allows you to use the ACSS BDC reticle to its entirety. So that's a plus if you're considering this optic as opposed to comparing it to a red dot. And I'm a huge fan of that because I'm always thinking on a worst case scenario. Field of view with this reticle is pretty good. If you're looking at a target at 100 yards, your field of view is 37.5 feet. So if you're looking at a target at 100 yards, you can see the target and roughly about what's 20 feet in a radius around it. But with all of that out of the way, I want to get into my favorite, absolutely favorite thing about this optic. And that is going to be this reticle that is on this optic. And generally, I know people really don't read directions on their products, but however with this, if you really want to get the most out of this reticle and this optic, I really, again, emphasize, highly recommend reading the instructions on this. So if you haven't heard of the ACSS BDC reticle by Primary Arms, I'm going to give you a quick guide on how to use it and why it's my favorite thing on this. There was a lot of science and physics that went into creating this reticle. Anytime scientists get involved with something, they love acronyms. So this ACSS BDC reticle, which actually stands for the Advanced Combat Sighting System Ballistic Drop Calculation Reticle. What that means is they went through a lot of tests, a lot of calculations, and with certain calibers, which this is for 223, 556, 545, and 308, they have different points of impacts at different ranges. And in the instructions, they go through what every little thing in this reticle means. Because if you're looking at this reticle, there is a lot going on. You have 4 vertical dots, a horseshoe around the center vertical dot, 2 dots to the left and right of that, and you have these little stadium markers to the left and right of the target, as well as one big circle horseshoe that goes around the entire reticle. Now this honestly, when I first started researching into it, I was geeking out because I, along with every other member on Range Day, we're all engineers, so we love science and physics. And this just gets us like that. So, first of all, let's break this down. The big ring around the entire reticle, the largest horseshoe, that is actually the CQB reticle. If you're within about 10 yards, that CQB reticle is pretty good for fast target acquisition. Still in CQB, I would prefer a red dot. Since there is no magnification on a red dot, it helps with target acquisition, and there is a cognitive delay with using a Prism sight versus a red dot. A red dot is just faster. With that being said, you can actually get very fast with a Prism scope. It just comes down to training. Towards the end of running some CQB drills and some CQB moving, we started to get very fast with using that CQB reticle on this Prism scope. So moving on the left and right hand side of this large CQB reticle, you have these little tick marks on a ladder is what it looks like. What that is a built-in rangefinder on your reticle. Given the average person is 5'10" and about 18 inches wide, they use those assumptions in creating this. If you line up a target that is 5'10" at the bottom of this little ladder mark, you can use those height marks on the side to get an idea of how far that target is away. So for example, in this wonderful presentation, this target is actually 400 yards away. And this target is 600 yards away, given the fact that they are 5'10". The widths are also used on the side, so given the target is 18 inches wide, you can use that also with these little stadium markers here. Moving outside in, which that is what we are doing with this reticle, you have two dots to the left and right of the center reticle. What those are lead reticles. Giving an average target moves 8.6 miles per hour laterally, you can use those at 100 to 300 yards to lead your target. That is the only thing I was not able to test with this reticle in this review. We did not have any capability of safely moving a target at 9 miles per hour from left to right. So that's the hole in this review. I was not able to use that. Moving on in, you have another smaller horseshoe, which could be used for quicker target acquisition or could also be used to range finding. The internal measurement on that horseshoe you can use for a 200-yard range find, and the bottom you can use for a 300-yard range find. That is the ACSS part of this reticle, and the BDC part of the reticle are these four dots in the middle. The center part of this is for your point of aim from 50 yards to 300 yards. This is all set up on zeroing this reticle at 50 yards. If you don't zero this at 50 yards, it's going to be a little off with your BDC at range, and they're not going to line up how it's supposed to. We found at 300 yards, it's not going to hit on that dot with a 223 or 556. At range, 556 and 223 shoot pretty flat. So keep that in mind. However, we notice the point of impact around 300 yards is really in the middle between that 50-yard mark and that 400-yard mark. So knowing that, we were able to get consistent hits at 300 yards at range. Below that, you have the 400, 500, and 600-yard marker respectively. And so if your target is at those ranges, that is where you're going to aim. There is no wind compensation on this reticle. It really just has BDC over range. So that is one thing it doesn't have, but keep in mind, this is a 2.5 times CQB scope. So it's really not meant to be ideal for reaching out at 500, 600 yards, although it is fully capable of that. So this is not a precision rifle scope. This is really more of a combat scope. Using this at range is incredible, and that's why this is my favorite part of this. Did some long range shooting with Uncle Ray, and we were consistently hitting targets at 300 yards and hitting targets at 500 yards with this. I got it. Yeah. Now the whole point of having this BDC and ACSS reticle is to increase your hit ratio. It's not going to guarantee a first hit every time because there's some wind compensation with this that you have to figure out on the fly. We were shooting through 10 to 20 mile an hour crosswinds, sometime peaking about 25 miles per hour during that day, and it was pushing our point of impact around at 300 and especially 500 yards. Although you're not guaranteed a hit every time, this whole system is set up so you can have a good starting point. So once you aim a little bit, compensate for wind, use that BDC reticle, take your shot, you see your point of impact, and then you can immediately shift. Granted, wind doesn't screw you up too bad. You can hit that second shot. And that's really how it was. We were missing about 1 and 2, adjusting our point of aim, and then making a third connected shot at 500 yards, which was pretty impressive. We were not using accurized match grade rounds. We were just using some steel case lacquered 223. We don't have a precision rifle that this was on. This is just my 16-inch Palmetto State Armory build, which we love. We love Palmetto State Armory, so we're not knocking that. But what I'm saying is I didn't have an accurized adjustable stock or anything like that. This is just a good, sturdy AR-15. One thing that really helped at trying to test this reticle at range was trying to remove the human factor as much as possible. What I mean by that is if I was standing trying to take this shot at 600 yards, my reticle would be all over the place for just how far that target is. So Uncle Ray actually had a bog tripod with a death grip on it. So we laid that down, death gripped the rifle, and that reticle was just held steady at exactly where we needed it after we adjusted it for wind and everything. So testing the reticle and not my skills as a shooter was huge for testing out the validity of this ACSS ballistic drop compensation. It's advertised right now on Primary Arms for $200. At the time I was able to find a coupon code and got 10% off, so I got this bad boy for $180. For a Prism scope with clear glass and a BDC reticle, that is insane. That is a great price for an optic, especially in some of their newer optics like their 3x and their 5x ACSS reticles. I have not had an opportunity of shooting that. Uncle Ray has a 3x one and he loves it. Primary Arms just continues to bring affordable and reliable optics to the firearms community. Overall, this is a great scope. The only issues I've had with this was the initial stability of the Picatinny mount to the scope, but ever since I've tightened it up, put some Loctite on it, I have not had any issues with it. It's held zero every time I've gone to the range and after long days on the range. If you're interested in different mounting capabilities, Primary Arms offers those. They even have a mount for you to mount to a carry handle. So if you're going for one of those old school kind of Black Ops looking rifle, that you can get. Would I recommend this to our viewers? Would I buy this again? Yes, I would. This is a great optic. I'm thrilled with it. The ACSS BDC reticle is wild, and nothing feels better than hitting a long distance shot with science. Using this optic has made me realize one thing. If I ever have a choice between a BDC reticle or a standard crosshair, I'm going with the BDC any and every time. I know people don't like to have a lot of clutter in their field of view, so having all those really random dots, but I love it, especially for taking longer distance shots, which you probably won't have to do, but it's still a good skill to have as a marksman. We also had an opportunity of testing out a 6.5 ACSS reticle, and it was dead on, especially with some match grade, heavier grain ammo. We were ringing still at 600 yards. It was a blast. So that is everything I have for this review. We love this optic. And if you liked the video, please let us know by leaving a thumbs up on the video. If you have any questions about this or have any comments about what you saw in this video, please leave a comment in the comment sections below and we will get back to you. If you like this video and you want to keep up with the channel, what we're doing at Range Day, hit that subscribe button. We are seeing some very exciting things happen here on the channel, and as we continue to grow, we can bring more and more content to the viewers. With all that being said, this is Mac with Range Day, where every day is Range Day. Thanks for watching.
One hand sideways.
You got it, boss.
Oh man.
Come on, lad.